Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
WisconsinEye is in Marshfield Clinic interviewing David Gorski of Wisconsin Rapids. He's a Democrat running in the 72nd Assembly District. David, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
Thanks, Steve.
On your campaign website, you cite several major issues. Let me ask you about one. You call Foxconn lunacy. The Foxconn, the $4 billion in state and local tax breaks. Why is it your term lunacy?
Well, for one thing, it is the single largest state taxpayer giveaway to a foreign company in the history of our state. We, in the 2019 budget, I believe we have to budget $200 million, which we're paying out to Foxconn. What people don't realize, these tax credits, and it took me a while to figure this out, but these are refundable tax credits, which means when you don't owe anything, you get money back. So I just don't think we should be investing in a foreign company with a bad reputation for employee relationships. They've had people in China literally jump out the window at their factory, commit suicide. They have a very poor environmental record, and they have backed out on deals in Brazil, India, and some in the United States. So they're not trustworthy.
You also say, different subject, our waters are being polluted and polluters are not being held responsible. Elaborate. Examples?
Well, a big example is Kewaunee County. 34% of the wells and 34% of the private wells in Kewaunee County are polluted. Many of the people, most of those wells, you can't drink the water, but beyond that, you can't even bathe in the water because those wells have bacteria in it that if you have a cut and you bathe in it, you could get an infection. And this has been going on for a very, very long time, and the polluters aren't paying. And in the town of Armenia, which is not in my district, but isn't very far, there's a farm there where surrounding wells have nitrate levels up to 77 parts per million. That's almost 8 times higher than the allowable drinking level, and those people aren't paid. Polluters should pay for that cleanup.
The Kewaunee County polluters, are those, is that runoff from farms?
It's from the spreading of manure. Kewaunee County
So who should be held responsible? The farmers?
Well, I think they should be.
Okay.
And I know that's rough on agriculture, but you know the truth of the matter is they know they have karst soil, which means there's cracks in the soil, which leads right down to the groundwater, and they're spreading manure over the top of it.
One of the big impasses in the Capitol is how to pay for highways and bridges. How would you pay for them?
Well, I think we kind of missed the boat when gas prices were really low. But, I mean, we only have a couple options. Either you can raise registration fees or you can raise the gas tax. I said last time, raise the gas tax. I'm saying the same thing. And I know it hurts poorer people, really like myself. But, you know, we need to raise it and then we need to index it to inflation so we don't end up in this situation again. Because now we're at second worst in the country. Last time you interviewed me, we were third worst in the country for roads.
How many pennies would you go up in the gas tax, David?
You know, I'm going to say 5 cents, but I don't really know. I think that needs to be studied.
There's a lot of buzz in the Capitol about tolling. Your position on tolling?
I'm not sure on tolling. I think it would hurt our communities like near Minnesota where people go back and forth like Hudson. And I don't know. I don't know about tolling. I'd rather stay away from tolling. I'd rather look at a gas tax or raising registration fees.
Okay. The current 2-year state budget does raise state aid for our K-12 public schools. Do you think it raises it enough, or do we have to have a similar big increase in the next budget?
Well, let me put it to you like this. Our state funding to public schools in 2019 is $153 million less than it was in 2011. Now, if you add up, if we would have froze state funding levels at 2011 through 2019, public schools would have had $3.5 billion more. That's how much public schools have lost. So don't believe the thing that now we have an education governor. We don't. He's hurt public schools, and we still haven't put all the money back he took out in 2012.
How would you pay for additional aid to K-12 public schools?
Well, you know, during the same period of time, 2012 to 2018, when we took $1.5 billion out of public education, we rained tax credits and subsidies mainly on rich people to the tune of $8.7 billion. That was a mistake. It's trickle down economics. I don't believe in that. I believe in building our economy from the bottom up and the middle out. So we have the wrong approach.
The school choice in the voucher program has grown from Milwaukee to Racine to statewide. What's your position on it?
Well, the 72nd doesn't need vouchers. We have great public schools. I'm a retired high school and middle school counselor for the school district of Nakusa. I went back last year to a long-term sub-position. I did the credit checks on the entire building. You know, our classes have shrunk. We have about 90 kids, 85 kids in our junior and senior class. We have 30 kids on the National Honor Society, and those two, that means they have a 3.7 or higher, and they're taking tough classes, and I've seen their ACT scores were doing great. And here's the thing that I got to say about this, is that there is a bill written by Dana Wachs it's called the Taxpayer Voucher Transparency Bill. It didn't go anywhere because it was shot down by Republicans in the state legislature. But you know what it calls for? Can I ask you a question, Steve?
Sure.
Where do you live?
I live in a suburb of Madison.
Okay. Do you know how much you pay for private schools?
I've seen the printouts, but I don't remember what my school.
But you don't know how much of your property taxes go to private schools, do you? Because it's not on your tax bill. That's what the transparency bill calls for. You should know, because that figure is scheduled to go up every year for 10 years. And if you saw that on your tax bill, an increasing charge to you for private schools, mainly religious schools, you might get upset. Well, taxpayers should know that. Here's one more thing I'm going to say about it, is that we have legislated increases for private schools for the next 10 years. Well, when a public school needs more money, it has to go to referendum. Private schools should do the same thing. They should have to go to referendum for additional property tax dollars. That's only fair. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
UW system funding. We've had a freeze on resident undergrad tuition for 6 years. Should that freeze continue for a 7th and 8th year?
I don't think so. Because under Doyle, Doyle cut funds to the university system by $250 million, but he allowed tuition to increase. It went up 5.5%. Katrina Shanklin will tell you that, we had a $250 million cut to the university system, but the tuition freeze is equal to another $250 million cut. The university system is the single larger generator of jobs in our state. UW-Madison and the surrounding area has created 50% of all new jobs created in the state during the last 10 years. Why are we attacking the greatest economic engine in our state? Doesn't make any sense.
There'll be a big debate in the next budget over whether we need a new state prison, with the prison in Green Bay and Waupun built in the 1800s and closing the 2 juvenile prisons. Do we need a new state prison?
No, and I'll tell you why. The state of Minnesota has exactly the same crime rate or close to it as Wisconsin, and they incarcerate half the people we do. Did you know, and I just learned this, did you know that the second marijuana offense is a felony? And that's for possession of any amount of marijuana. We're throwing way too many people in prison. You know, we have to end crimeless incarceration. You know what that means? It's when, you have a parole violation, or you don't pay your fine. It's like a debtor's prison. You can be paying your fine right along the way, and you don't pay it, poof, they throw you back in prison. What are we doing? We can save so much money if we just did what Minnesota's doing. So, no, we don't need any more prisons. We need less people in prisons, not more people in prisons.
You mentioned the penalty for marijuana. Do you support legalizing recreational marijuana and medical marijuana?
I definitely support 100% behind medical marijuana. It helps a lot of people. A lot of people that are on opioids could use marijuana for pain instead. That just makes sense. and it's good for epilepsy and people that after chemo have problems with appetite. It has a lot of purposes. Medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, my concern is access to adolescents. I was the drug and alcohol prevention specialist for NACUSA, and I did a school-wide activity on marijuana, which talked about the effect of marijuana on the adolescent brain. The human brain has two major growth periods during life. One is in the first year of life. The second one is during adolescence. So we don't want any psychoactive substance to cross the blood-brain barrier during adolescence, because the brain is in a stage where it is trimming and changing its neurons to adjust for critical thinking, math, art, and we don't want to mess that process up. So if I knew that there's research from the state of Colorado and Oregon, Washington State, California that showed no increase in the use amongst adolescents, then it would be for it. But I care about adolescents, and I want to make sure that we're not messing up adolescent brains. So it would all depend on the results of that research.
Given your work on those drug issues, what are the next steps that should be taken to curb the addiction, the epidemic of methamphetamine, opioid, and heroin?
Well, I think, I come from a prevention background. I wrote about $500,000 for drug prevention when I worked in NACUSA. So I think that's one factor we're missing. We can work with students in the public school system, screen them. If we're noticing things going on with them that are indicators of maybe they have an opioid problem, or if we catch wind that maybe there's an opioid problem in their family, we can connect them to some services. So early intervention, early education, a lot of that money is taken out of our state for drug education and prevention. So I think we could put it in on that end. I think we need to focus in as far as law enforcement's go. We need to get the dealers, and then we need to spend a lot more money on treatment.
In light of the mass shootings and school shootings, do we need to change gun laws?
Well, I think 97% of the nation wants universal background checks. I think that's a really good start. I don't want to take anybody's guns away, but I think we have to talk about 30-round clips, because that's how a lot of people are dying. So, yeah.
Healthcare, the rural areas. In rural areas, there's lower average income than the statewide average. Young people are leaving. More and more government healthcare. Government is providing more and more healthcare. How do we continue and improve healthcare in Wisconsin's rural areas?
Well, I know there's some sharing of services between communities. I don't know if it's always possible. I know telemedicine is becoming popular, where somebody's with the patient and talking to the doctor. So, that could be one thing. But I think what's really important is we have to think about attracting physicians to our rural communities, which means we need good public schools. We need things for doctors to do while they're in our communities. So we need good parks. We need, we have to have opportunities for them while they're in the community.
So state government does have a role in recruiting and retaining doctors, nurses, and other health professionals?
And another thing we can do is loan forgiveness. I lived in Chile, and you can go all over Chile in these little towns, and they have things called postas, and they're recent graduates. Then they have to do 3 years at the posta, or 2 years, or whatever it is. Maybe we can have, and I don't know what we have for that, but if we don't, we could sure use a program like that.
You mentioned student loans. Should students, former students with loans, have the ability to refinance
Absolutely. In the state of Minnesota, you can refinance loans at 3.5%. Why don't we do that here in Wisconsin? My opponent is going to tell you, because it creates this big bureaucracy, well, if we create an office with 20 public employees, so what? We're taking that money in from $24 billion in student loan debt in the state, affecting 1 million people. You know what? We need policies that help the most Wisconsinites. We have to think about helping everybody, not just the people at the tippy top.
And then final question, you're challenging an incumbent member of the Assembly. What differences, do you want to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 6th?
Well, a big one is the Voucher Program. My opponent is against transparency of the voucher program, the putting the how much you pay for taxes on your tax bill. He'd be against referendum for increases for private schools. He's for this program, according to Tony Evers, that is headed towards a $1 billion a year program. I think we have to have transparency and accountability for that program. He is against that. I'm for the refinancing of student loan debt. He's going to tell you that it just creates another government bureaucracy. I'm saying it helps 1 million Wisconsinites. I'm for protecting our water. He voted to overturn the mining moratorium. He voted for a high-capacity well bill that gave some people unlimited forever water rights. That's wrong. The Wisconsin the Wisconsin Public
Doctrine of public.
says that water belongs to all of us.
Yes.
And so we only have a reasonable right to use the water. That bill allows people to use water as much as they want forever, sell their land, and whoever buys it has the same water rate.
Good. Thank you. Dave Gorski of Wisconsin Rapids is a Democrat running in the 72nd Assembly District. The general election is November 6th. Dave, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.